Front row, Bill.
You guys played with more aggressiveness last week. I know that was part of the plan. How much of that is enabled by the fact that you know your offense is going to put up points, so that if you give up a play, so be it, but you want to play aggressively?
Yeah, that gives you a lot of confidence, And we tell our guys sometimes. I mean, football's a game of momentum. Where it comes from, who knows? At times you got to create it yourself. At times it comes from your offense. Maybe eventually, some point in time, it comes from the defense as well. So there's momentum all over the field. The key is once you get it, you got to keep it. And if you got to create some different ways of doing it, that comes with the game. But you have some confidence built up in the fact that that the ball's in the offense's hand. They got a real good shot to continue to move and give you some breathing room.
Urban said that the one deficiency, he used that word, but the one area he's still concerned about are the linebackers. What's your view of that position?
It's a daily grind, and we're just in a situation where depth and things is really tough. You got a bunch of young guys, and sometimes you say young guys and guys that don't have a whole lot of experience. So that's an area that we're continuing to build on a daily basis, and whether it's on the field, whether it's off the field, whether it's recruiting, all those situations is something that obviously I see on a daily basis, see too often. But all you can do is continue to battle through.
Front row, middle, Steve.
Yeah, Coach, I want to just ask, you got a lot of young guys, backup players into the game in the second half. As you went back and looked at it yesterday, who were maybe two or three of those guys who played all the way to the end? And you had a couple good defensive stops there in the second half. Just who were some of those guys that really stood out for you, I guess, in the last quarter and a half?
Well, we kept a lot of those guys in to an extent, but a guy like Tyvis Powell, who's a young guy, who's a redshirt freshman kid who went and played some more safety other than just nickel late in the game. You get in Von Bell, who's a true freshman. All of a sudden, he's playing at star. He's playing your nickel back and doing some things. And Trey Johnson is playing some will linebacker. And when the lights are on, you see some things show up from him. And you continue to roll those guys up front. So there's a bunch of guys up front that you got to that those guys sub in a little bit more than maybe the other spots on the team, but don't get an extensive work. So your Chris Carters, your Steve Millers, and some of those situations where those guys got to play in a big time atmosphere and see how they react and respond.
Second row, Doug.
Hey, Luke, Marcus Freeman is coaching on the other side, and I know you have a history with him. Did you see a kid that maybe could become a coach one day when you had him, or what did you see back there?
Well, as he would hopefully tell you, I tried to talk him out of it, because to me that's what you do. Any kid, any player, kid, or somebody that comes to me, if it's my own son, the first thing you do is you try and talk him out of it. You say, it's a crazy business. You do a lot. There's a lot of things you give up. Obviously, there's things that you get, but the number one thing is especially if you played here and went here, sometimes you think about, I want to get into coaching because I want to coach at Ohio State. And the reality is, not every place is like this. And if you're the reason I talk them out of it, or try to, is if you can't talk them out of it, then they're fit for the coaching profession. And as much as I tried, I couldn't do it, and you see why.
Is he a cerebral kind of guy back then?
Yeah, I mean, again, he loved the game, he enjoyed the game, he understood the game, and a lot of times I never thought about coaching. I never once had I grew up around coaches my whole life, more of wrestling coaches and different things, but never did I once think about coaching until all of a sudden football was done. And when things are taken away from you, you step back, you start to look and say, okay, well, what are the things I really, really enjoyed? What did I love to do? And what do I want to continue to do? And that's, I think, when it comes a little bit clearer to you.
Middle, Dave.
It sounds like Coach Meyer's a little bit involved with the defense. We were just talking about that, whereas somebody like Coach Tressel wasn't involved at all in the defense. He used to talk about that. He was talking about how he thinks Ryan Shazier is really good at blitzing. What's that like when the head coach is, as the defensive coordinator, what's that like when the head coach is also involved in the defense?
I think it brings a lot to us. I mean, the more ideas and the more minds in that room at times, especially with someone that comes from a different perspective. And sometimes coming from that offensive perspective gives you some real insight. And sometimes it's tough at times when they come in and say, I think you should do this, and this hurts us, and this hurts us. But the reality is, it elicits some conversation. And we're always, you're in this business because if you take a day off, you're losing ground in what you're doing. So you're always looking for new ways and new ideas and things that are difficult. So, and I think that's a different perspective that he brings and gives to us on a daily basis. So we warrant it. We really enjoy it. Sometimes it's tough, but the reality is it makes us better.
Front row, Tim.
Yeah, look, a couple things. Number one, what do you remember about Coach Hazel and more than anything else that stood out that allowed him to be a success at Kent State, and now he's taking on this challenge at Purdue to turn that program around? What stood out about him?
I think probably the number one thing you'd say is he believes in what he does. You know, great confidence in what you do. And I mean, there's a million different ways of doing it. I'm sure, as you guys have covered and you see. I mean, every coach is different in his own way, and you know, there's not one formula that says this is the way to be successful. And you know, when you go and do it yourself and you have success, obviously it's a lot easier to show. So I think when he left out of here, I said, you know, the reason he'll be successful is because I know he knows what he's doing, but more importantly, he knows why he's doing it. And he's not going to change on a daily basis. The consistency of who he was and what he does, I think, is what you'll eventually see.
The other thing, Pitt Brown with that interception, you know, much has been made of losing Christian Bryant, the void it left, leadership-wise and everything else. What does it do for Pitt Brown to have a big play like that that kind of turns a game, but also what does it do for the confidence of the defense to know they've got another guy back there?
Well, football's a game of momentum. And it's a game of, you know, when you have it, you got to keep it. And that's probably one of the tougher things as a young group is creating that momentum. Sometimes we got to get it from our offense. Sometimes we got to get it from whoever. The reality is we got a big play in the first drive. You know, where it came was even bigger. But the reality is that whether it's great for Pitt Brown, it was great for the entire defense, it was great for the entire team. It created that momentum. It created that energy. It gave us some of that confidence that, hey, even if people move the ball, what you got to do is you got to force them to get in the end zone. And when you have a shot at something, you got to make the play. So I'm sure it's huge for his confidence, but it's huge for the confidence of the whole group as well.
Far left, Rusty.
After that 2011 season, there was a lot of people were really disappointed, thought that the program was at the bottom. Could you have ever foreseen this? It has not lost since.
And it's hard to look back and to think about, you know, some of those things, but the reality is there, like Coach will tell you at times, you'll hear him say that there's not bad teams. Really, there's not. I mean, there's enough good players at most places. You know, maybe not the same as here as some other schools, but the reality is there are good players, and having everybody on the same page is big, and the leadership is a part of that thing. And you know, if you really look back, I mean, it could be completely different over the past 2 years. You know, the thing is we were successful last year in a lot of those early games that what did it do? It created a great confidence. It created a great momentum. Not that Coach had any doubt in the way he does things, and not that you would have any doubt in the way he does things because you see his record. But 18 to 22-year-olds, obviously, as you've heard him say, question things. And to have that success the way we did and come through maybe the first 6 games of the season last year, you can say you can have great players and you can have this, but the reality is the guys come together, guys believe in one another, guys have confidence in what it is that they're doing, and good things happen. Because, you know, just like you can go back to 2011 and say, well, if you'd have done this in this game, and maybe you're close in a couple games, and maybe the season's different. Well, the same thing you can say last year. And, you know, there's something to say about going through tough times. You know,
Sort of like snowball effect both ways, that things started to go bad, and they continued to go bad in 2011.
it's a lot of that, and a lot of that is leadership. You know, because when things are tough and times are down, you see who can get you out of those things. And you know, there's no substitute for momentum and energy. And I don't care what level of football it is. You know, and you can see that that's what has gained. That's what we have gained over last year, over this year. That we probably lost as much as anything in 2011. And you know, and how do you, if you're going the wrong way, what do you got to do? You got to do something to create it the other way. Whether you have great leadership that can pull you out of it, whether you got to make a play, whether you have to have some drastic something that happens to get guys back on track. So there's a lot of psychological things that are involved in it. Belief in what you're doing is one of those big things. But people are truly buying in and having that ability to continue to, when you have the momentum, to keep it, and if you don't have it, find a way to get it.
Front row left, Doug.
Luke, you guys have not given up anything close to a long run this year. Why is that? Why? You've done well.
Well, hopefully we learn from last year. I mean, the greatest thing you can say is, I mean, you know, you learn from the things that you don't do well, and you learn from your mistakes. And I think after last year, early in the season, that was one of the big things that we had a problem with. And, you know, people can say it's tackling, people can say it's this, but the reality is it's a leverage issue, you know, and it's guys with great effort to the football. And when you're playing hard and you're playing fast and you're playing with great leverage, you can still give up runs and yards, but the reality is you're not going to give up the big ones. And when you don't give up the big ones, you got a chance to be successful. And I think that's probably the biggest key to what we do is, hey, keep the ball in front of us, make sure we're running ourselves inside out, and you be aggressive. Everybody talks about, well, missed tackle. You had this. No. We can't worry about missed tackles. You miss a tackle with good leverage, and you got 10 other guys or 9 other guys coming to the football. When you start worrying about, well, I got to make this tackle, which you've seen some in the big field, in the open field, and guys hesitate and wait. It's a lot harder to make the tackle when you hesitate and wait. So having that belief and that confidence in one another and play with great leverage and learning from your mistakes is a big part of it.
What you've seen, either looking at Purdue and their offense on film so far, or just what you know of Darrell Hazel from being around him here, does he remind you of Jim Tressel in any ways?
Well, one of the greatest qualities I think that he got and had and probably grew from with Coach Tressel is consistency. He's not going to be real high and real low, and that's a sign of a great leader. That you can, through tough times, you don't change who you are. And that's what I know about him. So it's not like he's going to be down or he's going to do something crazy or something different because they're in the situation that they are. That you got to battle through tough times, and when you're consistent, your young men learn, and they learn that from you. That hey, just because we're on a roll, he's this way, and when his things are down, he's this way. To create that consistency, the guys will start to understand that, learn that, and they'll take that image from him as well.
2 more questions. Todd?
Look, with the way you guys are playing right now defensively, is there any personnel grouping, package, scheme that you have a reluctancy to call?
No. I mean, the biggest reluctancy to call something is whether it's any of us calling. It doesn't really matter. But the reality is what our guys understand. What we know and what we understand as coaches doesn't really matter. We got to continue to focus on the things that those guys understand. And when they understand what they're doing and have have an idea of not just what they're doing but why they're doing it, then they can play a lot faster. And I think that's what gets lost in the whole part of this is, hey, what about the scheme? No, it's not about the scheme. It's about the guys being in a position that they can be successful. There's some things for the people we have that, hey, in 2007 we were really good on defense. I'm just using 2000. Really good on defense, and we did a few specific things because that's what some of our guys did really well. Well, that's a different team than right now. Whether it's a Mike linebacker or Will linebacker or Leo or Viper or whatever you want to call them, we got to continue to figure out what it is that our guys do well, and let them build off of that, as opposed to asking him to do something that, well, in theory it should work, but the reality is we're asking him to do something that he physically might not be able to do.
And last question, Austin.
Luke, is there something aside from Shazier's athleticism that enables him to be such an effective blitzer?
No, instincts. I mean, blitzing is about timing. And guys that great timing and understand blocking schemes and an aiming point to where they're going gives them a lot better opportunity to be successful. I mean, we've had some really fast guys that are not good blitzers. We've had some really slow guys that are really good blitzers. And it's a knack. It's something that comes down to, like I said, timing and aiming point in order to be a great blitzer is something that is sometimes tough to teach. Obviously, they can get better at it, but sometimes those are things that are really natural in what they do.